And so memories are recalled and no doubt exchanged. But like all epic events, the facts of the Battle of Britain have become clouded in mythology. Typically, Sir Christopher Fox Leonora has cogent comment on the subject.
It is interesting that if you went up to the average man in the street and said, "Do you know anything about the Battle of Britain?" and he'd say, "Oh yes, a few dashing young English officers flying Spitfires defeated the Germans." They weren't as few as all that, you know. People are very surprised, but there were nearly 3,000 of our people in the battle. Not at the same time, never more than about 700 at one time, but 3,000 actually qualified. If they were dashing, they didn't last very long. They weren't all young by any means. A lot of them were, of course, but people like Douglas Bader, Sailor Milan, well over 30, and some of the Poles and Czechs were over 40. By no means all officers. People forget that 1/3 of the pilots in the Battle of Britain were NCOs. And in fact, some of the air crew in the fighter Blenheims and Defiance weren't even NCOs, they were airmen. And they weren't flying Spitfires. 2/3 of the aircraft flying were Hurricanes. Everybody's heard of the Spitfires. So dashing young officers and so on, that's a 100% inaccurate statement.
Sir Christopher Fox Leonora is expressing the wit shared by all his colleagues amongst this group of very, very distinguished veterans, the company of whom Her Majesty is obviously enjoying. But even on royal occasions, in gatherings such as this, airmen talk inevitably of aeroplanes.
How did you compare the Spitfire with the Hurricane?
The Spitfire, as we all know, was faster, sleek-looking airplane, a beautiful airplane to fly. The Hurricane was heavier, a little slower, but of course could outturn the Spitfire and the 109. A superb gun platform, the Hurricane, could absorb a great deal of punishment. And I knew that because my airplanes seemed to get hit rather more often than I hit the Germans at that stage.
The 109 we found could outclimb us. It flew faster than us, but she could never outturn us. And it was turning that mattered in that sort of war.
I was hit in France earlier on, before the Battle of Britain, and the Hurricane just shrugged off the bullets through the fabric, which was a great advantage over an all-metal construction.
Talk to any ex-pilot about the Battle of Britain and he will pay tribute to the ground crews. They too are, of course, included in this distinguished gathering.
Oh, and quite often times I was driving this Bowser full of fuel around with bombs dropping all around. But I was doing no more than all the rest who were working out there, you see. I don't quite know how to put it because you didn't realise what was going on. You was busy. Sometimes you waited and they didn't come back. Sometimes your plane came back but you saw others waiting and theirs didn't come back. Fortunately, although planes didn't come back, quite often pilots did. In fact, at one time we was passing Elm Park underground station and two of our pilots came out of the station with their parachutes tucked under their arm. They'd come back from a sortie by underground. We knew for a start that we were fighting for our life. Individually, the country was fighting for its life. And that plane had to be got up as soon as possible, and just what we did.
Polite conversation and many an amusing tale to be told. But what did it really feel like to be a pilot in the Battle of Britain?
How did you feel when you saw your first enemy airplane?
Very confused. We went into a crowd of bombers and it was just chaos as far as I was concerned. I did all the right things, I think. I sort of put the gun button on to fire. I pressed the thing at the right time. Whether I hit anything, goodness only knows. But that was it. And, well, of course, if you had any sense, you didn't hang around after that.
Can you remember what you felt when you saw your first 109?
Oh, you know, for chaps like me, we were all the same. It was terribly exciting, really terribly exciting.
It must have occurred to you that you might be the next to be killed.
Oh yes, the thought certainly did cross my mind more than once, yes. But it didn't bother you unduly?
No, it didn't. I think the time when one was really apprehensive was coming down to the airfield just at dawn or just before dawn, and you could smell the new mown grass on the airfield, you know, and you wondered if it was going to be, you'd see the next morning.
Yes, yes.
These thoughts certainly cross one's mind, naturally.
I don't think it was typical, but there was, in fact, a factual occasion, as it might be, this mess we're standing in front of now. It was at Croydon, I believe. Two young pilots turned up in a motor car, greeted by the CEO, "Come on, we're at readiness, off you go." And they went up, and they were both killed, and the car was left there. That was their sole participation. It lasted perhaps less than an hour.
What do you reckon was your closest call?
Well, I had several. I was foolish enough to stay up alone when I should have come home. And I found myself at the end of what I thought was a loose line of about 27 Messerschmitts. And I had, I think there's a Walter Mitty in all of us, and I envisaged myself working down the line, and I'd forgotten number 28, who got me, and I was very badly shot up indeed.
Did you bail out?
No, I was able to get it back, but as I landed, the rudder controls went completely.
Where did you land?
I landed back at Biggin Hill.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wheels up?
Oh, no, got my
put the
wheels
wheels
down,
up?
yes. Couldn't operate my flaps, and my port aileron had been blown off, and my canopy had gone, and my rear view mirror, and big holes in the airplane all over the place.
Yes, you must have been a bit twitched by that one.
I was a bit upset by it, yes.
Did you think that some of the British pilots took the whole thing a bit casually?
Well, I wouldn't say casually, but a little bit differently. When we came here, we had sort of experience of dealing with Germans. And although we didn't mind Germans, we hated Germany.
Some treat it as a sort of a sporting event, usually, especially auxiliary ones. There are quite a number of them. But I was lucky to be with Paddy Finnegan in the same squadron in '65. And he took it very seriously. And we had a long chat with him, and he told me, "Look, Ski, there never must be another war, because that doesn't solve the problem." And I entirely agreed. And I said to him, "Yes, but let's have Holland free first."
50 years ago, these young men were caught up on the relentless tide of history. But did they realize it at the time?
Did you ever have any doubts about the issue?
We never thought we'd be beaten, and I think we thought it might have gone on a bit longer. But the Battle of Britain as such, it stopped. We didn't win anything. Don't think we won any battle. But we did buy time, a little valuable time, which enabled our bomber command to get geared up, enabled the army to start getting to grips, enabled the navies to get going. If we hadn't won that air battle, and don't forget it's the only time in history two air fleets have ever met each other, when the change of a whole war happened. If we'd lost that air battle, I think you could have said the world would be a different place today.
What about you yourself? Were you confident of victory?
I think, yes, I think we were. I think in those days, there was a lot of red on the map, wasn't there? There was a British Empire and so on, and ignorance, arrogance, call it what you like. Although things were rough, things were bad, I don't think anyone ever thought we'd lose.
The Battle of Britain was just as important as the Battle of Waterloo and the Battle of Trafalgar, and indeed of the fight against the Spanish Armada, in that it saved this country from invasion. And had we lost that, God knows what sort of a state we'd be in today.
But I think the time is approaching when, reluctantly perhaps, Her Majesty must leave her friends in that enclosure to continue the formalities of the parade. And so the Queen and Prince Philip, escorted by Sir Peter Harding and the Air Equerry, Wing Commander David Walker, proceed to the saluting base in the center gate of the palace in readiness for the march past. Sir Peter Harding on the Queen's left, the Equerry behind, the Duke of Edinburgh to her right. And now one of the most moving and proud moments of the entire occasion. The lone and erect figure of Air Chief Marshal Sir Christopher Fox Leonora, followed by Wing Commander Pat Hancock, leads the marching contingent of veterans of the battle, which in turn and alone leads the entire parade. Sir Christopher, a truly great chap, swept into the very start of the war from Oxford University Air Squadron through Lysander in France, escaped near Dunkirk, went on to a brilliant service career. Behind him, those of his kind who a half-century ago performed great deeds, though they will deny it, but who are proud and thankful to be here today, and that they will not deny.